Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Nature Folklore Sessions. It's the 20th March 2022, Equinox Day here. Well, thank you all for joining me on this, it's a bit of a cloudy equinox day here, but it may be sunny with you. It's our weekly time for exploring nature-centered folklore, connecting this to within your favorite sanctuary space, and the sanctuary is the subject today, and expressing inspired visions from your sanctuary through your poetry, your writing, arts, crafts, performance, and even problem solving. And this is part 4 of the tree season series, and it's our tree sanctuary. And for some reason, I've got a picture that shouldn't be there, but there's a tree sanctuary. There you go. That's the center of the Tree Labyrinth here. And we're talking about an access to an essential space for nature and your own spirit connection to the life of nature. So this is a nature folklore session about uncomplicated and easy tree and nature connection. And here's someone that's wandering around doing that very thing. It's something that most of us are able to do, and it's really essential to do for our own precious sanctuary. Now, the guest today, we've got Cliff Carr, and that's him there. And we've got Tony Cookson, otherwise known as the birthday boy. There he is. And B. Smith's with him, already in the background. They're both backstage at the moment. There's B going on and off. And we got, again, delighted to have Dr. Briar Sachs. Well, that's another one of B, which is absolutely fabulous to bring that one up as well. But I'll give you a moment to read that one. That's a lovely phrase. Be there in the woods. And we've got Dr. Briar Sachs, who's also already in the background, waiting for us. And even Anne Bodling, she's here in the backstage. So we've got the crew in the back here, which is fantastic. And these nature folklore sessions, and the tree sanctuary support here, at least anyway, is brought to you due to the support of subscribers through Patreon and our PayPal donators. And the Buy Me a Coffee seems to be popular as well for people who don't like going through the PayPal. So there we go. It helps out. It keeps the show alive and helps me to help cover some of the subscriptions to enable me to be live today with the various toys I use. So thank you, and very grateful for your continued support, I tell you. So that it allows me to be here each Sunday to do this show for you. So let's see what lovely early birds are with us, other than backstage crew ready to share with you. Oh, we got a lot of people. I was wondering about today because it's Equinox Day here. We'll be moving on to you, and there's a lot of events on. I know here several people, they're on a project to clean up the boil. There's concern in the boil because there's a meat factory that is dumping in there. And I've got some interesting stuff going crazy on the computer already. Excuse me while I sort that out. It was so tech-free last week. Anyway, I'll just do what I can. Cliff Carr's here. We got something from him. Albanale blessings to you all from sunny South Wirral, sunny over there. And Shell Goosh is wishing us wonderful blessings there. I'm just trying to get something going here. And we got Lamont Davis. He's going through the Facebook today. Lovely to see you, even though I can't get the message up. There we go. Happy equinox to all. And then Anne has given us blessings and wishings there from cloudy Pennsylvania. And Brittany Bauer, who's here, Winnipeg, Canada. I'm glad. I hope you're doing well today, and all you too as well, that you're all having a fantastic time, and you'll be inspired by some of these sanctuary blessings that we got. So, anybody else to chat to? We haven't got like last week, we haven't got the YouTubers through yet, but they'll be coming through, I'm sure. And thank you, Brittany, there. We got someone else coming. Elise is here. Happy equinox, John. Lovely to see you in fine health. I hope you're all in the fine health, Elise in Portland, Oregon, very early there, which is fabulous. So, I'm going to kick off with the first guest. Cliff's here, so why not kick off with a song from Cliff Carr? He sent this one to me for Imog, but listening to the words, because a couple of days ago, our light was longer than dark, although they say that happens in equinox. That happened to us about 2 weeks ago. 2 days ago. So we're well into greater, lighter days today, which is fabulous to have. So, we got Gina. Gina's come on board. Happy equinox to everyone from Switzerland. Happened to be the International Day of Happiness. So there we go. We'll all be very happy today. That's a good blessing for us all. So I hope you all experience some fair amount of joy today to properly mark it. So there's a lot of things to celebrate, as there is every day, but it's wonderful to know that it's recognized, especially as a day of happiness, but let's not it be the only day of happiness. So to get on with a roll with the guests, and there's always a game we have with Cliff Carr. What famous person does he sound like today? We've had him sounding like David Bowie. We've had him sounding like, I forget his name, the man in Jam, the singer. I shouldn't forget. Anyway, who is Cliff Carr performing today? So here he is, Cliff Carr, with a song, and it's The Light That Climbs, which is very essential.
Darkness, a new dawn in time, climbing on the horizon, silent harmony and rhyme, for the light that climbs in the sky, each and every day, as it rises higher and higher, bringing new hope again. The wind that blows colder still will blow soon a warm breeze, the sign of spring before us, as we leave the winter's freeze. For the light that climbs in the sky, each and every day, as it rises higher and higher, bringing new hope again. The day has come and the day is gone, gone to the dead time of night. Use milk and fertility, rebirth and increasing light. For the light that climbs in the sky, each and every day, as it rises higher and higher, bringing new hope again. Immortal time of rebirth, make ready the fertile ground, the signs are for all to see, just go and look around. For the light that climbs in the sky, each and every day, as it rises higher and higher, bringing new life again. That climbs in the sky, each and every day, as it rises higher and higher, bringing new hope again.
Well, thank you, Cliff Carr. And there's another shot of him, so you get a face to the actual song there. So thank you. That's a bit from Cliff Carr. Now I'm going to go into the deep end here. Oh, it's another picture I think I've got of him there. There you go. In festive mood there. Okay. Now, I'm going to dive into the deep end because through the sanctuary of our tree labyrinth, you may regard, well, we may regard addictions such as, let's get these out, Mia, addictions as drugs, alcohol, gambling, pornography, shopping. We can go on to quite a range of things. And here's here's a tree of addictions on this one, if you can actually see that one. The motivations of these addictions seem to be quest for money, power, pleasure, achieving attention, honor, loyalty, just a few of the things. We can't, it's really individual to individual, but that's a generalization. And through our addictions, we may believe we found truth and control to achieve a better life and a better world. But we certainly become more powerless under an addiction to affect any change that we believe in. So addiction seems to separate us from a balanced relationship with fellow humans, animals, and all life on Earth. And I'm talking about this now because this has been, for some reason, a common chat on the social media with me this week. And so especially our relationship with the spirits with this, disconnection from that, disconnection from all that we may say, the she, the God, or our goddess, just a disconnection. And this is why I love tree sanctuaries. It's one of the reasons I do love them. And they're a wonderful space to realign ourselves with the truth of connection and with the spirit of life due to the dance of biodiversity and that's constantly present amongst the fairly random presence of trees when we allow this. I believe that the cures, or may I say a better approach for addiction, the process of reconciliation can include quiet contemplation to sense, observe, examine our conscience, but to actually encourage someone with addiction to do that is a tough point. They've got to do it for themselves, of course. But again, I just love being among the trees for this essential nourishment of connection. And especially if we're not a person of addictions, or don't think we're of addictions anyway. Maybe I'm addicted to putting the Sunday show on every Sunday. But I feel that a tree sanctuary is a wonderful space to surrender to confession of our addiction or whatever we are allowing ourselves to be disconnected from this spirit. So a wonderful space to surrender to confession of everything that is disconnecting us from this life that we really need to be among and be part of. And contemplation also includes an awareness of sacred actions that create restitution towards returning to balance, what we have to let go of, and even what we bring into our lives, or what we connect for that whole restitution process. And we do this, I think, through a practice of virtues. Now, being aware of contemplating and dealing with addictions, what that does is stop the violence within ourselves, because there's a lot of debate because of world affairs about violence. But a lot of the time I notice with people on social media that what they're posting as opinions of what's going in the world tends to be very much a mirror of the violence that's within themselves. And this, I feel, is where a tree sanctuary can really help out in a huge way. I've seen it happen here with our tree labyrinth, that it helps for us to connect and melts down and smooths out the violence within ourselves. Now, also, if we stop the violence within ourselves, it stops the violence that we may perform, and then ridiculously asking for forgiveness after we perform the violence. Stops all that. So contemplation seems to also commence a kind of spiritual forgiveness that religions may call atoning our sins. So no human can do this for us, of course. But being with a biodiverse space, it does seem to serve us well in these situations. Now, to carry on my preaching moment, sorry to be a little preachy this morning, but I've been touched, I suppose, by the commenting this week. It's a bit longer, another debate I engaged in, a bit of a longer one, really. But as usual for me during this week, it was the debates about St. Patrick, because we've not long passed St. Patrick's Day, have we? And this year there seems to be a lot of added anger because the Patrick story has been interpreted, I notice on the social media, very much through current feelings for the Ukrainian situation and even the Yemen situation, which people are sad about being ignored, and also the Sudan and Syria as well. Now, folklore seems to work like that, I feel. We seem to often use folklore to interpret the present, yet argue that our story is actually from the ancient past. But we take stories from the past in order to interpret our present. That's part of what the show is about. Now, this is why, as I say, I stick within nature folklore. I don't do much on the battle folklore because that seems to get into amazing egotistical complexities that I don't want to deal with, not on the show. But with the Patrick story, my approach is to try and imagine what was it like at the time when Patrick, the so-called Patrick, when he arrived in Ireland, what was surrounding him? What was this place like? Imagining, you can have great fun with visions imagining this. And one question I ask is, was Patrick actually just one person wandering around an island that was still quite forested and perhaps had not a very good road network, maybe something like this? He arrived and the whole island was a bit like this. I mean, probably paths not even as good as that, but that's an ancient Irish forest. And there again, did he travel by foot, horse, or horse and chariot? That would be a luxury, wouldn't it? But these are things we may never know. Now, it seems there were people settled already on this island like him who were going around trying to tell stories of the Psalms and the Gospels well before Patrick arrived. And though it seems Patrick had Roman heritage and Roman-style education, such as being I just cannot see him gathering enough allegiance from people already here on this island to actually go around, getting an allegiance, and go around slaughtering local teachers and medicine people that today we may call druids. I just can't see that, the people and the allegiance. Yet this is what people are expressing because they're expressing the folklore around what's happening around the world now. But I can imagine Patrick approaching people with something like, "Hear ye the stories I have," in whatever language it was at the time. That I assume he had the language of the island, somehow to be able to communicate it. And I'm sure the people would have found these stories of the Psalms and the Gospels an interesting change from the inherited stories that they have been living with and were told and passed down. So this was something fresh. A bit like some countries when they first see their US Hollywood movies, I suppose. This was great. Adds a bit more color to what we got and makes a change from what Granddad told us and so forth. So I tend to wonder if there was just one Patrick too, or is that just a name describing a whole bunch of these characters going around, and the Patrick name was later applied to telling about this piece of history as a singular symbol just to represent all of them. Now, to me, when I hear stories today of Christians honoring Patrick as being the converter to Christianity, that seems to be wishful control thinking in my mind. But likewise, when I hear stories today of the so-called pagans about Patrick slaughtering druids and their followers, something like this, that seems to be wishful thinking too in my mind, to justify their own dislike and distrust and even anger of me, of my pictures going all over the place, of the anger of the Christian religion. Now, I agree that snakes were probably used as symbolism for driving away earth-based beliefs. And I've lost the, something like this. And especially at this time of year when the earth and its underground is currently being the womb of the new life that's sprouting this spring. And the soil is about to warm up now, and we got a lovely forecast of warm weather, and the soil will be warming for a bit next week before cold a week after. But the worms are really active, aren't they? The worms are starting to get going now. You'll notice in the garden over this coming week, especially in this area, they will start wriggling about. And if we had snakes here, they'd be starting to move around too. So if you're living in a country with snakes and you're getting similar weather to us, I'm sure that's what's going on. Now, I think the snake symbolism associated to Patrick was created long after Patrick's life here, though. Personally, I believe if we are truly of earth and nature faith and paying attention to the cycle of seasons in relation to our gardening, our woodlands, our wildlife, and especially the birds who are going into nesting now, and all the life movement on earth, then the last thing we're going to worry about, are we, or even teach, is Patrick going around slaughtering people. However, to sustain the nature faith, we cannot cut out the very active femininity at this time that's going on underground in the soil. And I've got a permaculture series coming up. I'm going to spend 2 Sundays talking about that very thing. But we've got this going on in the soil, in the underground waters. And now the light is longer than the dark. We got the warming days, so in comes the sort of male element, because the male, the heat, it's a yin-yang situation, isn't it? And I think the darker Patrick stories may nudge into not holding on too much of the patriarchal side of living that the Christian teachings may be trying to influence, or did do, especially in the Puritan times. So this is a balanced time, like the Oriental yin and yang, in my feeling. The cold balancing, because it's still cold on the ground and dark. And then we got the hot, warming light above ground. So contemplation, to me, it seems much more essential than just paying attention to a picture I don't have. But contemplation seems more essential than just paying attention to the players. Sorry. The players of that ancient time. We may focus on Patrick and the devil and the snakes, but what about the conditions? Contemplate on what was going on around at that time, and then place Patrick and the snakes in that. And I think if you did that, place players into your visions of the conditions of the situation, then you'll be telling a very different story. I think this is the same with the language. When you go into old Gaelic, Gaelic languages that are talking about conditions, it's so very different to our Latin approach of talking about things. So we'd have a very different story. And of course, we'd only have a different story if our biases, if our angered bias feelings distilled away. And this is where a tree sanctuary really helps. So I think this is another wonderful use of a tree sanctuary as a space for contemplating, a visioning wholeness from the weaving of diversity, just like this lad here. So I would let's see what you're saying on this. And because earlier we had Cliff, so everybody is giving Cliff a good sort of clap here. Who we got? We got Gina, that's the Swiss. And then we got Davina, who's joined in. Good morning. And Cliff himself, the star of the beginning. Hopefully just be me. Lovely slideshow of the song, John. Thank you very much. Yeah, I couldn't, I put a few photos together there, Cliff. And what's saying? Cliff's song, lovely way to begin the show. And Sherry's with us, lovely. Thank you very much, Cliff. That was lovely. And Claire Roach is about. She's actually in the cottage somewhere or off for a walk. Thank you, Cliff. And I know she likes Cliff's songs there. Most lovely song and photos. And Cliff is saying thank you to Anne in response. And thank you to Claire. Thank you to Sherry. Thank you, Cliff. And now Davina, of course, was thinking about this last night, how people need to go to the forest to heal their issues. In fact, they're going to be escorting groups to the woods for healing in the near future. How interesting you bring this up. Great minds think alike. Well, that's a nice compliment, isn't it? And Cindy Smith, nice photo, whichever one that was. I'm glad you found one that you enjoy. And now what we got here is, I think, our next guest. Let's bring on our next guest. Time is moving on, and I've been yapping too much. But I hope there was something in that you found fascinating. And so our next guest is actually called the Birthday Boy. He's changed his name because of the day it is, the day that's in it. So the Birthday Boy is a very familiar and loved storyteller for many of you. And the Birthday Boy, who happens to be known as Tony, he lives much of his life between the sanctuary of his own diverse garden and the writings of his visions that are formed from that space. And he shares this in performance wherever he can, in beautiful settings. His own words, we don't hear much of his own words because he loves the words of other people. So he tends to share those as well, especially Yeats' poems. But he has a beautiful interpretation of the Yeats poems. He puts his own personality in them. And so I've invited the Birthday Boy, aka Tony Cookson, to join us this afternoon. And I asked if he could share a favorite poem of this time. Well, he asked, would it be all right to share this poem? But I'm not going to say what it is. I'm going to say hello to Tony, and I'll let him talk about it, which is going to be a delight for us all. So, hello, Tony, Birthday Boy. And we'll explain the B part later, someone that is familiar with. You're looking very ready for action.
Looking very birthday looks. This is my birthday look, John.
That's your birthday look, is it? Yeah. Oh,
that's fantastic. My birthday look, yeah. It's not often I see it, but it's there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yes, and right, yes, you a poem you wanted to a David Wagner poem, if you'd like to say something about it.
Well, let me say that. Yeah. Let me just take this up. So, thanks for the opening. I really love the opening and the idea of sanctuary. And this morning I was in the garden. As you know, I go there very often. And I planted around 500 bulbs this morning with the idea that I'd create part of the garden as a sanctuary, as a kind of wood, bluebell wood, put a seat in it, and I could... in the springtime next year, I could sit and contemplate, because that's really, it is so beautiful sitting there contemplating. So I'm not a writer of poetry, but I love poetry, and so I'm going to start with a blessing, and then I'm going to move into reading you a poem, which I think will connect to everything that John has said previously. Most of what he said previously. There's nothing about St. Patrick in it. No? So let me say this, open with the first verse of a favorite poem, which I'm going to, I tend to remember it regularly. It's by a mystic poet called E. Cummings, and he says, I thank you, God, for this most amazing day, and for the leaping greenly spirit of trees, and the true green, blue green of sky, and for everything that is natural, and for everything that is yes. For everything that is natural, for everything that is yes. A lot of the times, especially now, we're saying no to everything. But now the light is coming and we can say yes. So I've chosen a favorite poem by an American poet called David Wagner. You might not know him. He's not as famous as W.B. Yeats, but this is a lovely poem, and it's taken from, I believe, his connection to Native Americans. And to me, this poem works on many different levels. And it's about, the title of the poem is called Lost. And at this time, many of us are lost. And we're lost, as John said, because at the core, we have lost our connection to that which is spirit, that which is natural, that which is yes within us. So this poem invites you in a very practical way to return to that connection to yes. So I'm going to read it because I haven't learned it off by heart. So if you see me looking down, then I'm reading this poem. So one of the key aspects of this poem is it invites you to a relationship with stillness and silence. And there's nothing quite as lovely as going into a forest, into a wood, and just simply being there and abiding in stillness and silence. So, without further ado, I'm going to read this poem. So this is a poem by David Wagner, as I said, and it's called Lost. Lost. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger. Must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers. I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush is lost on you, you are surely lost. So stand still. The forest knows. The forest knows where you are, and you must let it find you. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. And that is a poem by David Wagner entitled Lost. So thank you
beautifully
for listening.
done. Beautifully shared with us, Tony. And from comments you were posting last week, it looks like you're well on your way to getting your sanctuary, your labyrinth, the water feature in the middle, as well as your bulbs. That's a project for this year.
You're the inspiration, mister.
It's been a delight because so few people this week have been telling me about what they're creating this year. So we'll get you back to talk about that as it happens, and with more readings, because it's absolute delight to have you. So thank you very much for that, Tony. That was a beautiful contribution to the day, and I'll explain what the B part is later on. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. Have a great afternoon. The wonderful Tony Cookson birthday boy there. That's absolutely amazing. And Cliff thoroughly enjoyed that. Cliff Carr, beautiful Tony, love the hat. And he also said happy birthday, Tony. I don't read too much into that, folks. Happy birthday, Tony from Lamar. So we got hope the burn is feeling the burn too. Soon he looks very uncomfortable. And Claire Roach found something absolutely fascinating. So that's wonderful. So thank you very much. And thank you again, Tony. And we'll talk about the bee as well. And as I say, people have been talking to me about what they're doing this summer with their tree sanctuaries, their flower sanctuaries, and the tree labyrinths. And Jane Gilgan, I must make a special mention, because right from the start of these Nature Folklore, she's been a huge sponsor, but she sometimes watches on the side, never hardly ever with us live, but she sent me pictures of what she's doing with her new Rhode Island garden. And oh boy, she's keeping it personal at the moment, but it's a wonderful, it is a labyrinth, but it's her personality in it as well. And I'll be getting more about that. As I say, Tony is doing that. So I'm going to share some more thoughts about the purpose of Tree Sanctuary. And as I say, I warmly applaud people. We've been featuring over the last couple of weeks, people who've been on larger projects, especially last week. You know, so they've taken over stewardship of large projects, something like this. And so they've got some land and they've dedicated it to the purpose of expanding woodland cover, this whole farmland. We've again people who've been taking over 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 acres and getting people together onto projects. All this stuff is incredible, but it's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about anybody getting a few trees together, really, and making that a sanctuary. The trees may already be there. So this is encouraging small tree projects, and there's a couple of people looking at a small tree project there, and this is something that most of us can do. And small tree projects leading to sanctuary can provide us, as I've been speaking, what Tony was saying, it provides us with priceless, calming and inspiring sanctuary, just like how I lead off every Nature Folklore session. Also, this session, as we continue, is really for people who don't have space for trees as well. If you're in an apartment, it's very hard, isn't it? And sometimes you might have a small garden, but your neighbors don't like trees. So the moment the trees start growing, you're going to get challenged by that as well. And we may include a bit of labyrinth garden creation, I'm not sure, which includes herbs, flowers, soft fruit plants, whatever you've got available. And yeah, I've got a herb labyrinth here. That's what people are wondering here, as well as a soft fruit one. And I believe that it will be a great loss now without Tree Labyrinth Garden that we have here at the garden, here at Carracroy. I've really come to find this a precious place to go. It's a place to go that's very easy. It's there, sanctuary. But once it's established, the Tree Sanctuary or Tree Labyrinth Garden, it tends to function also well as its own democratic community of life. The trees and plants and everything seem to have their own councils and democratic community of their own that we're not even interfering with. And so because of that, the maintenance of the Tree Labyrinth here has become far less and less. And it will do with this type of garden, because what happens is we actually become a component of the garden rather than the controller. Like if you have a lawn, you're trying to keep it as a lawn without weeds. You try and do that with your raised beds. You try and do that with your flower beds. But the sanctuary, you're the component of it. You know, you might as well be one of the trees and one of the plants, because you are an inclusive part of what's going on. So what we end up with, we soon find ourselves having access to a lovely outside space that opens up more time for us to bathe in the sanctuary rather than having to feel that we got to care for it, because it's caring for themselves. Now, the two main purposes and benefits from at least a small tree sanctuary I discover is, first, it is a place to retreat, to rest, connect with your outside surroundings, whatever the weather. And it's nice, obviously, when it's sunny. And there we can contemplate and trust. And the second is being a place that's very accepting, or we become very accepting to our inspirations, our visions, our ideas. And this all gives us wonderful clarity for problem solving. We're not rattling things left or right in our head. We actually have visions like Einstein had, and various scientists of the past as well. Isaac Newton was another one who worked off of visions as well. So at the start of every Nature Folklore session, I encourage the joining of those two purposes, of course. And in the Bards in the Woods, I used to do the same thing. So the idea is to offer nature-based folklore as a source of inspiration, as a kind of prompt. I find these nature folklore stories a nice prompt to get those visions going. That's why I do it. I don't do it to be a repeat of what I learned at university. I do it as a means of a prompt, merely that. And I trust that through these nature folklore sessions, one or two things, I hope, inspire and may encourage you into creating and maintaining an existing tree sanctuary and labyrinth garden, just like the people have been messaging me this week, knowing this program is coming up. Or we can, if we're in an apartment and we have challenges, we can attract local people willing to share a tree sanctuary or at least the labyrinth garden area. And I actually, as I say, with the birthday boy, you saw the word bee. And so I invited Tony Cookson's wife, Bee Smith, or Sojourning Smith, of the Sojourning Smith blog. I think she might have that listed. If not, we'll get that to remind you up in the comments. And Bee has actually humorously played around with contemplating our connection with trees, but this time she considers individual species. And so with Bee, she's delightfully going to share, she's a brilliant poet, but a very fitting poem for this day. I've requested Bee to share. So let's get Bee up to talk about this. Hello, Bee. You're in the whoops. There we are. The birthday boy's seat has moved over, and there's Bee. Good morning to you. Yes, very good.
Good afternoon,
Wonderful.
John.
Thank you, and you. I forget who's on in the morning and who's on in the afternoon. Yes, you're an afternoon person up the road. Yeah, you came on at 2 p.m., not 2 a.m. like some people.
Yes.
But that's wonderful. Right. Well, first of all, how are you doing? You've been writing a fair bit lately, I believe. There's the odd gem that comes up in the Sojourning Smith, which is wonderful. But of course, I'm impatient and wishing to hear another recital from this wonderful tree poem.
Well, I have been very busy. At long last, as per tomorrow, the Quilca Lakelands Geopark Poetry Map, which it's been a project that I've been working on, dreaming of, visioning since October 2020, is finally going to go live. It's a digital poetry map with new poems, some that were commissioned, some that were submitted, and that's all going to go live on UNESCO World Poetry Day, which is tomorrow. March 21st. So yeah, I've been busy. So this poem I wanted to read today because it's one of John's favorites. I think I read it for the first time in Words and Harps going back to maybe 2010 or 2011.
Something like that, 9, 10, 11, I think.
Somewhere along that line. And the title of the poem is called Nemeton, the Marriage of Danu and Billa, the Sacred Tree. And in the Irish language, there are two words for tree, and one is cran, and a slightly older one is billa. And when I was reading one of these mythologies saying, and Danu, and her husband Billa, and I thought, that's a tree, but there are 7 chieftain trees of Ireland. And that just, in the way that poets think, you kind of go off on a tangent, and this is the result of the tangent. Nemeton. I will tell you now how it came to be that I, Danu, smooth-shouldered and full-hipped with full red lips, came to marry a tree. And not any insignificant sapling either, lost amidst a massive plantation. Oh no, not one to be glanced askance. No, mine's a real green man of a tree, one who could shake me utterly, his roots claiming my spirit and flesh in a shameless lock, a sensuous refrain, a rustle and cry echoing through the wood. Apple smelt so good. He was quite the springtime snappy dresser, and his delicious fruit was a bonus. So juicy, so sweet. I had to eat. I just had to have him for my husband. Now Oak was very manly, macho beard, a lovely crop of chest hair. He was a keeper, durable as plank and fair as a plane. So I just had to have him for my husband. With Pine I married for the children's sake, so sweetly garlanded with popcorn and cranberry, festooned with twinkling lights. Such a jovial ho, ho, ho sort of a dad. I just had to have him for my husband. I needed to dig a well. It can be so very useful to have a man who's handy, gentle, and astute enough to define an S-bend and pipe leaks. So I just had to have Hazel for my husband. Now Ash was a diversion and good breakfast conversation. He made me laugh and gave me letters and language. He made me a heroine. So I just had to have him for my husband. As for Holly, a burly sort of fellow, to make a woman feel safe, to know he would do battle for our boundaries and all just for my sake. Well, I had to have him for my husband. But for eternal love, from cradle to grave, who can compare to you? 1,000-year lover, my soulmate unbetrayed, forever green. Inevitably, I had to have him for my husband. I married them all and gathered them, all my gorgeous green men, and made them a grove, all mine. They clave to me as I did to them. I was a good wife. I loved them all, their roots wrapped around me, their limbs praising to the sky, their sap rising and hearts beat. I was a good wife, good husband each to me. I loved their soul's breath on my cheek, the fire in the end, the kindling log, even the charcoal embers that was our life and loving. And that is Danu, who married Villa.
Oh, I think that's the most beautiful you've read that. That's gorgeous. And one thing I love about it, it's like I was saying earlier about using the folklore in order for our modern vision, and that's what you've done in that poetry. I think, to me, that continues the folklore as a prophecy of our present. So that's beautifully done. So thanks for sharing that again, B. And there's lots of comments about that, especially like Sherry Murphy. Lovely to hear this poem. Magical being, I dare say this is your best. It's like the Song of Solomon for tree folk. There we go.
Oh,
and
wow.
and Cliff's absolutely well done, Sherry. Be the trees. I love that poem. Oak is a keeper. I love it. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And Gina here is, if I can get her up. Yeah, she's there somewhere. And there you go. So beautiful, B. Thank you. And Davina's got something to say. That would be nice. A mighty oak of a man. Beautiful B. Took my mind place. If you've met Davina, you'd know how that comes off. Well done, Davina, for making that comment. And Lamar as well. Delightful and beautiful B. Wonderful the comments. There's and Sherry says, yes, I know, I'm biggest fan. I would say a lot of people here will say that's biggest fan. So thanks very much for that. And
You're very welcome, John.
have you done a lovely cake for the birthday boy today?
There's no cake. And I feel really guilty. It was a question of, I've spent time in the garden, helping him in the garden this morning.
Oh, well, that's more important.
So, and then I need to go and practice my speech for the launch tomorrow. But
or
just
get some chips on pretty quick.
Oh, but Tony is the king of the chip making in this household.
Oh, he has to make his own chips, does he? Okay.
He is the king of chips.
Right. Well, that was lovely, B, and we'll see you again. Thanks very much for this afternoon. That's lovely. B. Smith as well. Always fantastic, and you loved her as well. And there was Sable who came on, who, as usual, glad to be here from Arkansas and loves poetry. I love poetry so much. There you go. And Tony, Claire Roach, going back to Tony, that was magical. Many thanks to you here. And Sherry again, amazing birthday boy, my dear friend. So thank you for the comments. Let's see what's happening. Congratulations, B, here from Claire as well. You and Tony, simply brilliant. Thank you for those comments, everyone. And thank you for the poems. And of course, on the end of... well, just before B came out, I started hinting about community trees and sharing, especially for people in apartments or in small gardens where they're too limited. So let's think of Tree Sanctuary for a moment as a community project, as a potential for that. This may seem be essentially useful, as I say, apartment people, and for those people where the neighbors object. And one approach is to consider, you've got to find out who's got a passion for the native woodland that lives close by you. There is a recent buzz phrase saying, you've got to find your tribe. And it does seem, in a way, it seems ridiculous. We've come to that. We've got to find our tribe. Through nature folklore, the deeds of people in the law, they seem to always be connected to what were existing communities of local people, small tribes. This is where the folklore comes from. Where have all those tribes gone? And so much has changed in the last 50 years, I find, that our tribal connections have been slowly eroding away, and everything has become centralized. Give some thoughts to this. Medical services. We always used to go to medical services in our community. Not now. We have to travel 20, 30 miles or more away. And our trading and shopping has also moved away from the social support of our local shops. Our trading and shopping has moved away from social gatherings at our local premises, and the markets have gone into supermarkets, ordering online. And the social calling of door-to-door traders is history now. And if someone knocks on their door trading, we just think they're con people, whereas they were part of our social circuit years ago, the broom salesmen and the travelers coming around to repair our pots and pans and bits and pieces. That's all gone, isn't it? There's not that connection. And even when you go into a pub and it's focused on a big screen with international sport on it, and it all draws away from our little conversations. At least there's still tea room cafes, they're returning. But they've largely replaced hosting similar things at home. Even our weather. Well, our banks are very centralized, aren't they? Our banks have sort of taken us away as well. Right, yeah, it's driving us away from cash, and so the list goes on and on. And politics have changed to support this. 50 years ago, I remember our political focus was mainly all dealt with by our local councils. Now, all this has moved into mob-powered movements. Especially, it's moved on to international matters. Mobs are getting together on international politics. And this all detaches us, to me, in my mind, to all things local. And people sort of ask me to join these international things as they do on social media. And I say, well, how's your neighbors doing? How's the family doing? And what's happening locally? They don't know. The connection is lost. So, and I tend to call this murmuring politics. You know, it's as if our humans have approached politics in the same patterns as the murmurings of the vast clouds of starlings. Now, one purpose I've discovered with Tree Sanctuary is sharing with a small group. And it's, you get a small group, you get a bit of a contemplative council. Isn't that much more democratic than being part of a mob on an international matter? In my mind, that does a lot more for each individual and probably gets a lot more done as well. It's just part of that connection and soulfulness. And due to the culture, our culture eroding away from localized values and deeds, we're putting a lot of this online now. I think many of us have become afraid of returning to this type of thing. You know, we're wondering what's our presence going to be, because I think we get used to being keyboard warriors, and we think we're in command of all this stuff that we're posting. And then suddenly you're back in this group and you realize you've got to be part of this group. You can't be the individual keyboard warrior thinking that you're building a tribe anymore. You know, this is the tribe that's very democratic. So I feel this is, we're getting into a dangerous situation with this. And I feel it's dangerous when I see people posting how they're gathering people together to create change online, the keyboard warrior way. To me, that's a soulless addiction. And recently I read some people spreading a dream of actually leading to try and influence us to join them for a human reset. That's a common one that's on the social media. Let's get together for a social reset, and bragging how they're qualified to do that. So there we go. That's why that's what I'm going to say about that one. But I think there is now a strong fear in local groups, and the total reform of tribe, where participants cannot automatically think they lead just because they can work some keys, like the keyboard warriors do. But a local tribe needs to learn how to be democratic in council again. So what we can achieve together is better and more complete, more wholesome than the individual. And our individual skills are very much part of this. You know, when you leave and someone else comes in, there's a whole new skill set in there. So organically, the council and the group do change. And you realize is that each component has a skill set that keeps this complete. A bit like when you look at the cycle of the year, each month, if we look at months or each moon cycle, during that time, there's something that contributes to that year and it all becomes a whole. And I think that's like that with people. So our individual skills blend into very much a tribal intent. Now, I believe this can all start, if we can all start with a picture that I've lost. But you can invite people around for socials in your home. It's a shame I've lost this picture. It was a lovely one because it was a group of people here at Carricrory. Anyway, just invite people around for social, tea, coffee, home baking, cook meals. You know, each person bring a pot, salads, that sort of thing. Just get around the table in your home or a picnic outside in your tree sanctuary, and get to know each other. And that's how you build your tribe. And I'll show you, man got the photo of that. So when we would get together, the conversations tend to inspire us. And amongst those people, you're going to find people who are inspired by local trees, by trees. They love trees. And I think that's how you build your tribe. It's the people you get locally. And when the conversations have people joining in with trees, you'll recognize your tribal relationship with these people so that you together can pursue this. From a local woodland passion network, you may be able to find the site locally. There is a thing called, the sponsored here called Neighborwood. Well, no, let's see, we got Ted Cook here. I'll show him. He's been very good at encouraging this. That's Ted Cook down in Cork in Macroom. And from a small local woodland passion network, you may be able to find the site locally, get the foundation of a woodland started, or joining an existing projects that have already started. And as I say, in Ireland, we've got the Neighborwoods project. And around here, the Western Forestry Corp near Sligo are very good consultants to help you get this going, or even how to join this. And And there's another neighborhood community that happens organically once you get that going. I would like to talk more about this, but I think your own imagination ideas will help you do the rest and take this further and become a local tribe again. And patiently waiting in the background, we do have a wonderful, we have the wonderful Dr. Brian Sachs. You may remember him back when in our Sawan series, and he gave us a wonderful insight into crows. And he has Dr. Sachs is a wonderful author of human-animal relationships. He earned a doctorate in intellectual history and German at the State University of New York. He's worked as a consultant on human rights for Amnesty International, Helsinki Watch, and the Human Rights Internet. And Dr. Sachs also founder of a nonprofit organization called Nature in Legend and Story. And Dr. Sachs was so wonderful with his COVID edition into our series last year. And he's a writer of several books. We featured that one, Crow, which was a lovely book. And actually features all kinds of corvids, all the corvid family. And I actually like his Frog King book, but that's for another time. So overall, Dr. Sachs is dedicated to promote an understanding of the traditional bonds, those connections between human beings and the natural world. And for today, I've invited Dr. Sachs to extend that into a magical story he says he has about the life of trees. So let's see what Dr. Sachs has. It's wonderful to welcome him here. Let's get him on now. So good afternoon, or is he? Whoa, there he's gone again. Good afternoon or good morning, Dr. Baraya. You're muted. You need to unmute. Unmute.
I'm just
there. You go.
Just learning the system, but it's
very good.
Everything
Excellent.
seems to be working.
Well, right, brilliant. And thank you very much for being with us. Absolutely delight. And you talked to me months ago. Oh, can I talk about trees? So please do give us an introduction of this lovely surprise you have for us.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. My next book is going to be a book about forests, about the idea of an enchanted forest. Now, I didn't plan on this, but we've had so many lovely poems, and I also write poems, and my favorite subject pretty much just happens to be trees. So if it's okay, I'd like to start with a poem about that one.
Perfect. There we go.
Okay, this is entitled The Death of a Tree. Now, I know it by heart, but I don't want to take any chance of stumbling, so I might be looking down to read it. But once more, The Death of a Tree. For a man, there is death. For a tree, we need another word, for that flash of extinction may last until an infant tells a story to his granddaughter and is buried by his son. What is death? What is life? Before the soul has departed from a tree, worms nibble at the corpse, and squirrels leap through the outstretched hands. Bees make their home inside the ribs, and sparrows nest in the skull. The tree welcomes such travelers without regret or pain. Though appendages may crack, burst, crumble, and decay, the spirit can yet ordain a last, irrevocably final leaf, a message for the soil. Well,
Brilliant. Absolutely perfect. Because I certainly can relate to that one. I wrote a poem on a similar subject called Sleeping Awake. But that was beautiful stuff. Thank you.
well, thank you so much. It's about how trees not only represent community and not only live in a community, but a tree really is itself a community. It is so deeply integrated with other parts, other forms of life, including insects, birds, fungi, and other trees, that it is so often impossible to know or even guess where one being leaves off and another one begins. You know, sprouts can grow from the roots of a tree. Is that another tree, or is that the same tree? Two trees, even of different species, can grow together. And once again, can we say if it's one tree or two trees? Is it a hybrid or something else? There's a lot of individualism that is in our language, in our grammar, in the words we use, and that's not okay. That is okay, but when we try to apply that language to trees, we run into trouble. Just like to read one more, please.
Yes.
And this is called Falling Forever. The leaves plummeting are asteroids, rebel angels, volcanic ash. In winter, they are snow. When the crystals melt, they are water in the air. When the trees are cut and a town appears, the leaves are men and women. When human beings have moved away or died, they will once again be trees.
That's beautiful. Wonderful. It's delightful to have you with us, and I hope it won't be too long. I'd probably be inviting you back. We do a series in summer called Sustainable Practices, and I think it'd be lovely to come back to see how your tree book is going on, to be part of that. So, but that was such a beautiful contribution today. So thanks very much, Dr. Sachs, on that. And it was all due to Sherry Murphy that I contacted you in the first place. There she is, dear friend, favorite professor. It's always a blessing to hear your wisdom. Thank you so much for joining today and sharing. And,
hi, Sherry, and thanks.
And then Davina as well. Thank you. That was a really cool way to see a tree. And Claire's there, so tender, Dr. Sachs. Thank you for sharing that beauty. And it was done so beautifully well. So thank you again so much for that. And I look forward and hope you will rejoin us again sometime. So thank you so much. It's such a privilege.
I'd love to.
Oh, great. Thank you. Isn't that wonderful? The wonderful Dr. Brian Sachs. Can't wait to have him back again on that. And Cliff is thanking Dr. Sachs. Wonderful to hear your poems there. Little Wing just joined us through the YouTube, went for a walk and sat in the garden listening. It's beautiful. And then Sable reminds me of how Versailles was built for centralization and why it was desired and how that entire situation ended as well. This is what happens. And Anne, who we're going to have on, patiently waiting there in a couple of minutes. Got some land or you planted? Maybe I'll add some more husbands. And I think of B each time I look at them. So there we go. There we go. Well, that's getting into me. Never mind women and men and their harems. Perhaps we're going to have women now with their their tree husbands surrounding them. You've set up a thought there, B. Thank you very much. Very good. Well done, Anne, on that one. Let's see if I missed anything. And there we go. The Avian Illuminations. That's a lovely book by Dr. Sachs as well. Now, planting. Planting trees as a tree sanctuary is part of your permaculture garden, because after this, in a couple of weeks' time, we're going on to the permaculture as well. Let's take this as an example. There's a permaculture garden, typical, and it's got trees in it. And it's worth seriously considering this, because most people who get into a permaculture groove, they seem to have their outside raised beds, their polytunnels. They're all in the light, and then they have fruit vines and bushes that are not far behind. And once you get past the chickens, ducks, geese, there's usually the fruit and nut trees, and they're all still in good light. And I've just realized I haven't changed my backcloth for a while, so let's make a change on that. I've been so absorbed in the poems. Do I have something worthy? Not really. Well, I do have worthy, but let's just bring up some hazels. I did those last week, didn't I? Yeah, let's get on to that. As I say, you get behind the ducks and the chickens, the geese, and the fruit and nut trees are all in light. And there you got the trees. You got your tree in the semi-light. Let's get another picture of a. There you got. That's a real permaculture goings on there. You're really someone who's attempting to be very natural with that one. But sometimes there is woodland there. That's not only for your sanctuary, but it's good for the craftsmanship as well. There's some coppicing going on there, which is great with willow and hazel. So this can be outside your tree sanctuary, the wood there in your permaculture garden for your own crafting and survival. But more often, the intent is also having a rewilding space as part of your permaculture garden. And it's lovely to know. And even the rewilding space and biodiversity space, that could be your sanctuary as well. It doesn't have to be a labyrinth like what I've done. But having a personal sanctuary is great to contemplating, cool down in, relax. And also, as I mentioned earlier, this one isn't in the wood, and this one isn't even on the screen. There it is. You could have something like that. Anyway, that'd be quite handy. Or let's get something more comfortable than that. Anyway, from that thought wave I've got there, we've got one more guest, the beautiful Anne Bodling, a last guest again. Anne's going to be the first guest next week. So she's the last guest, and last, certainly not least, she has another lovely poem for us for this season, this session. And I'll let her introducing, because we're doing the same. We're going to line up the pictures, and hopefully this time I'll get them properly in sequence. So, good morning to you, Anne. I'll let her introducing, because we're doing the same. We're going to line up the pictures. There we go. And hopefully this time I'll get them properly in sequence. So, there we go. Good morning to you, Anne. I'll let her introducing, because
hi, John.
We're going to line up. Right. There we go.
Okay, let me just do it that way.
There we go. Good morning. You might need to switch off me at the back there.
I'm having trouble hearing you through the background, so.
Yeah, if you can get rid of my background.
I'm looking confused, that's why. So this was, John, you talked about at the beginning, being in a time of confession when in the, wait a minute. You talked about at the beginning, a time of confession when we're in the woods. And I hadn't realized that this poem actually does that. It kind of goes through being impatient for green and the trees leafing out all the way through to the end of being accepting of what is. So this is entitled Beauty Among the Browns. It talks about It's not yet spring here. It's almost spring, but not quite. And for those that are not in North America, these are North American birds that I mentioned. So you can substitute your own birds. So, beauty among the browns. Searching for beauty among the browns and grays and tans of winter's pall, I tire of platitudes about sleeping trees, their well-earned rest and exquisite structure, most keenly noticed in their nakedness. I tire of their stiffness and the wind's fierce moan, pummeling bare branches and frozen bark, of icy earth and water. And so I search, intently, diligently, persistently, as though my life depends upon the outcome, which it does. My inner self that longs for beauty in the severity and meaning in the waiting, hoping that this trying time will give way to flowering and fruiting once again. In the seeking is the finding, subtle though the rewards may be. A few remaining winter berries hanging from dejected stems, fuzzy gray magnolia buds, and the very slowly swelling creamy globules at the end of sassafras twigs, enfolding next year's leaves. Beneath the wooden floor lie moth pupa and grubs and the pale green points of skunk cabbage, poking their heads above the surface, testing the temperatures, undaunted by the chill. Are these the vibrant colors I long for? Those that wind their way into verse and prose, so easily conjuring images that make me smile? No, but they are the colors of now, of what is now, and in that I will rest. They are the colors that protect and surround and allow the birds of winter to blend into their background and become invisible against the tree trunks. Juncos, white throats, song sparrows, chickadees, titmice, nuthatches, woodpeckers, Carolina wrens, mourning doves, and the coopers and sharp-shinned hawks that hunt them. Drab colors all. Beauty among the tans and grays, beauty among the browns.
Ah, wonderful. That was gorgeous. So thank you again for another poem in the series.
Among the tans and grays, beauty among the browns.
There we go, the encore. Ah, wonderful. That was gorgeous. So thank you again for another poem in the series.
Among the tans and grays.
We'll see you next week at the beginning. So thank you, Anne. Thank you for that. That was gorgeous. So thank you again for another poem in the series.
Among the tans and grays.
Well, that's good for me because I know that it works on your end as well. Thank you. All right. I will say the farewells. Thank you, Anne. There we go. It took a bit of time to get across the Atlantic, of course, and back again. Beautiful, Anne. That was gorgeous. Thank you very much. On the comments, and it was crystal clear. It was beautifully read, wasn't it? Anne shared that wonderfully. And in fact, I have to wait for the comments to come across the Atlantic as well. There we go. Cliff has got something up here. Lovely, Anne. Trees are waking where I live, new shoots of leaf. The cherry has come into blossom too. And Claire, yes, it's gorgeous, Anne. Thank you very much. And thank you from Sherry there. Beautiful. And we've lost your voice. I heard it over the Atlantic there in your place. So I hope you got the voice okay there. Thanks very much. Wonderful. So, someone's left me a wee message. Thank you for the poems. Right, there we go. One little thing quickly, I'd like to suggest that you bring a bit of wisdom into your space through planting a hazel or two. Always have that if you can in your tree sanctuary space. I think we could do with a lot more hazel farming, especially hazel hedges around the island. But a few tips. before I finish off about planting, I couldn't do this, didn't have time last week. I think we'll spread to a few minutes of this. And so I'm going to do a quick talk through. It's a bit strange because last year I was out there planting a hazel for you and going through the steps. So I hope it doesn't lose too much by just waffling on here. This is a time perhaps for using your imagination to see how this works. But I've got a few pictures to help you along. Now, this year, as I say, flash through some pictures. First thing, they're going to arrive, the bare root plants are going to arrive with you. Either you've got them from the tree nursery or they've come to you by some courier. So the first thing you've got to do is put them in a bucket of water. Never let the roots ever get dry. So if they come from the courier, unpack them immediately, put them straight into the water. Very first thing you do, because you might not, they arrive, you haven't got time to deal with them. So just get them in that water. And if it's going to be a few days before you plant the trees, you can put each of the bare root plants into a pot of loose compost or a spare raised bed you're not using. And then you can pull out the plants, planting time, this is out of a bed. And that compost you're pulling out of, you can actually use those to surround the roots when you do the planting, a bit like here. So there you go, that's padding a bit of soil on as well that's been dug out. And what I'm doing here, I'm approaching what you would do in your home garden, a tree sanctuary. If you were out planting a field, this is far too cumbersome, these instructions. This is really the precious tree sanctuary stuff when you're adding trees to that. So if your bare root plant is about 3 feet or 1 meter high, you're probably going to use a stake. You might do, especially if it's windy. There's a bit of a stake there. Put it into the ground. Put that stake in before you put your tree down. Otherwise, you're going to upset the roots. Very important thing to do. Get that stake in first. And obviously then, as I say, plant your tree before tying it to the stake. So that's the procedure. Stake, tree, then you tie it. And you fill your tree planted hole with soil and compost above where the roots come out of the trunk. But the one thing here, there you go, you fill that up here. But the one thing you don't do is pile it up too much. And I'm going to explain this. This can cause a lot of trouble. I don't know why park people do this, but they do. And that's not very good on a tree. I'll explain that in a minute. You can add feed like matured chicken poop, dried blood, bone meal, whatever you have, as long as it's not too fresh. But it's not essential to add that fertilizer. It's just if you've got it there and you need to recycle it and use it in some way. So why not put it with your planted tree? But be minimal. You don't have to put a load of this stuff around. Remember, when animals are going around the trees, they're sort of only pooping every now and again, and there's only going to be a dead animal around a tree, luckily once in its lifetime, if not at all. So you don't really need that fertilizer, because trees are very good at sending their roots. You know, they've got the tap roots, and they'll go down for a mineral feed hunt way down deep. So you really don't need fertilizers, because if you have fertilizers, the roots will go sideways rather than the taproot going down hunting. So that's the important thing. Encourage those taproots to go down, and that ensures that you've got a firm standing tree there, especially with the winds and gales and storms, and that'll encourage them to live through that. If you feed too much, as I say, you encourage the side roots and you restrict the taproot development, and your trees will be fragile in the wind. And this is what happens in monoculture. For some reason, they're stupid. They put fertilizer on. So you get this whole thing below Ben Baldwin there. Bit of wind captures a boom, they go flying over. And that's very troublesome in storms. I actually think adding tree fertilizers is nonsense. And they do a lot of these in these plantations. I don't know what that's all about. There's been healthy forests for millions of years before the creation of man-made fertilizer. So put your in your soil and a little compost, firm it in with your heel, keep the plant standing firm, and the rain will sort it out after. It'll firm everything up. But regarding tires on the trees, I think I've got something on this. See if I can find it. Rubber ties, you know, you might not think that's very eco, but they're very handy. You can adjust them. That's what I like about it. And so you never have to worry about whether they're going to be too tight. They're very easy to adjust to be sensitive to the tree. For some folks, they actually hammer those rubber ties into the post there. I don't do that. I've never done that. I've rarely had a slipping problem. That's what people worry about. If you don't like using the rubber, you can use hemp, sisal, any plant-based thick string or narrow rope. They're all good alternatives to the rubber ties. But you have to check them often and make sure those ties are not cutting into the tree. And another tip, if your bare root tree plant is 6 feet or 2 meters high or more, bury and perforate. I haven't got a picture of this, but get a piece of hose pipe and perforate it all the way down. And just take that down. Again, do this before you put the tree in. And what this does, it enables water to drip deep down should you get drought conditions. And then after about 3 years, you can pull up that pipe. You don't need it anymore because the tree will be able to sort itself out. Finish off with the bark mulch, leaf and bark mulch, and that keeps the water in. Check your mulch every year. Around April and May time is a good time to keep the trees mulched that way. And we often get dry, solid and drought conditions, especially here through May and June. And that can last until the rains come in July. Now, when you check your leaf and bark mulch, it's a good time to check the conditions of your ties as well and your stakes. Though you should really check your ties 4 times a year. Maybe at the holiday times is a great time of doing that. The equinoxes and the solstices, very good times to try that. And that stops branch strangulation. You don't want that. Weeding and thinning. I prefer to pull away plants that may be a major competition for the tree, rushes, couch grass, that sort of thing. Just clear it for up to 1 meter, 3 feet away in the early years. And once a tree is 5 years old or more, it's not critical anymore. A tree is already not being, it can stand up for itself. Now, another routine management task is keep checking for broken and dead branches, prune back if needed, and you can paint over, you can get an organic sealant and paint that over the pruned parts, and that gives extra survival protection. Also, check for drought and dry soil, especially during May and June, and water if needed. Get more mulch down to hold the water down. But after all that waffle, the most important thing is this, the relaxing man. Just sit with your trees when you can and connect with them through all seasons. And surely that's the most important personal purpose of putting those trees in the first place, as well as the carbon sequestration, is that what the word is, and the extra oxygen. So let's see what's being said now as we're coming up to an hour and a half. Little Wing's got some conifer action to compost my hazel and rowan trees like pond and aquarium water. They do, don't they? Well, especially hazel certainly does. Rowan is iffy, but I'm glad that works for you. I planted 3 from seed last year into the hedge, and although they still sticks, they have taken well with new buds. Too young for catkins. I split my hazel shells and put them in the sodden soil with a pot. Great idea. That's a great thing to do. Also, when you get the hazels, if you find they're too crunchy and you can't eat them too well, hazels are delicious if you leave them soaked in a liquid water or a juice, your favorite juice. That works very well. And why has this man come up? Anyway, Sherry's saying, John, such a lovely compilation of talented, magical guests, wasn't it today? Thank you, everyone, for that. And Cliff, lovely. The trees are waking where I live. New sheets of leaf. Cherry. Oh, we've said that one. That's great. And there we go. Claire's gorgeous. Anne, that's brilliant. Thank you, Anne, from Sherry. Lovely. All those fabulous comments. So that, yeah, what an amazing session it's been today. I'll tell you what's just coming up. And again, thank you for you patron subscribers. Let's get the comments sorted here. It's funny, we've been pretty much, I have one computer sort of play up, but I'm kind of getting a little bit of main computer problem. There we go. Yeah, the Patreon subscribers. There's this man who's still here, and I Can't get him to go away, just to show off that thing again that helps us out and funds it out. And for people who don't like the PayPal, that's another fundraiser. Thank you for those who've been doing these little donations to buymeacoffee.com, Nature Folklore. It's a little tip jar that you can use your card with. It's fabulous. Thank you very much. 2 ways of keeping this show going. So coming up, what we got? We got the last of this lovely tree season coming up. That's the 27th of March. And we're bringing it all together as a folklore edition. We got Trees and Water, bringing practical suggestions along with the folklore, because trees are full of water. So we're going to be in the realm of folklore with water and trees. Sarah Humble is going to be, we got Sarah Humble. She's going to be one of the guests of All Is Well. I know several people have said they're looking forward to next Sunday just for Sarah. And then 3rd of April, we start the series, permaculture series. It's going to be covering biodiversity. And the first part is going to be talking about food sovereignty. We're going to compare that to food security. The difference, again, with the events going on around the world, is very much a conversation topic right now. Very important, because there's extreme concerns about food supply at the moment. So Round Island people are itching to get sowing and planting outside at this time too. Polytunnel greenhousing, close seeding and growing, they're well underway. Will be by next week anyway. And though many people have got their outdoor potatoes going, the soil is not really warm here, though we're going to have a warm spell next week. But I think the week after, we're going to go back into the cold again. So it's not really a time for outdoor crops here yet. Anyway, that's the first part, food sovereignty. It's a 3-part edition. So we'll consider what we can do to enhance our own food sovereignty. We'll combine sustainability, some actions we can do, balanced planning, that type of thing. And then, as I say, we'll have the spirit of folklore to guide this along. And then what we got? We got the following, we haven't got the date, but the Biodiversity Underworld Part 1. That's 10th of April. So we're going to go into 1, talk about the soil and the magic underground. There's going to be some folklore with that. As I say, this is 10th of April. Or is it 10th of April? I may get my dates. Let's get me on our dates right. You might have to look on that. Yeah, 3rd of April is the food sovereignty, part 1 of the biodiversity and the underground stuff. That's the 10th. I got that in the sequence now. And on the 17th of April, it's Easter. So we break from permaculture to our annual Resurrection to the 3 Trees, which is, no, my 3 trees picture never came up. So I'll show that to you next week. I do have that one. But we go into that. Those are the Jean Tree, Gold Tree, and Sawn Tree. So it's going from the melancholy to the joy to the dreaming. So the 24th of April, we wrap this up with the second part, going very much into the underworld, how they talk to each other, the underworld connections, how that's vital for what our sovereignty and how we survive above ground. And so that's what's coming up. Right, in the coming weeks. So it's the last of the tree one next week. And Claire's gorgeous, Anne. Thanks very much. Sherry is thanking Anne. So I love the show. Thank you for being with us. I think it's time for me to get going now. And thank you to our amazing guest today, Cliff Carr, the birthday boy, Tony Cookson, B. Smith, Dr. Briar Sachs, and the gorgeous Anne Bodling to wrap it all up. If you're watching this as an archive, please keep commenting, because I check the comments and answer you through the week. Subscribe below, use the bell. Very handy to use the bell so you know what's happening the week after. And I'm trying to get my ducks in a row here. Shite. Sorry about that. Enjoy a safe week anyway. That's what I got for today. Our fabulous guest. Enjoy a safe week in your sanctuary full of wonder. You're all those inspirations and enchantments that you have. So that's me for today. Thank you very much. Until next Sunday, play well. And it's bye-bye.